About 2 weeks out of shooting, Disney came back and were like, you know, we can't have Princess Leia using a shitty lightsaber. I mean, following on from what I got from Stephen King's stories, like my conception of the Boogeyman was like, Boogeyman's just the word that kids put on this thing, and it's really this kind of ancient primordial evil. Like, we had this idea when I was working with the designers of like, this is the creature that cavemen were like huddling around the fire, this was stalking them in the darkness, this is like being around as long as there's been darkness and light, this has been living in the darkness. We wanted to feel like ancient, we wanted to feel like more than just a kind of kid's story, the story that parents tell their kids. It's something that's kind of fundamental.
Now all I want to see is a Prey prequel to this movie where you go all the way back to caveman days and do that. I like that idea. Do you have a personal boogeyman, something you grew up with that kind of sticks in your mind, or like a fear of the dark or anything like that?
I'm just scared of ghosts, you know? I'm just scared of like good old-fashioned ghosts. Like anything, the whole kind of, you know, staring into the darkness of your room and, you know, is that my hoodie draped off my chair? Is that a person? Like, that was really, I was that kid that was scared of everything, that was staring into the dark, imagining shapes, and like, so that was really the feeling that I was trying to get at with this. This was me exercising my
Put that fear to very good use.
Giving it to you guys.
As you were describing that, I was picturing the one thing in the basement with the dress and the mother.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of going back again to the beginning, we jumped ahead a little bit here. I am very curious to hear about your journey from making Host and Dashcam to your first film with a studio. I'll get at this with a two-parter here. Can you tell me something about making a studio horror film that came with a bit of a learning curve, something that you had to adjust to, but then also something about that process that came as a pleasant surprise?
I think really, I was super anxious when I went into this movie. You know, I'd done Host and then Dashcam, both of which were filmed on an iPhone. Both shot on this iPhone, literally this iPhone. So I hadn't been on a real set for about 3 years because of the pandemic. And I was just so anxious about, you know, will I remember all the ins and outs? Will I be able to kind of like measure up? And the thing you forget, I'm stealing this from Christopher Nolan, this is like the best bit of advice that I've ever heard. Someone asked Christopher Nolan about the difference between shooting Following and Memento and the difference between shooting The Dark Knight. And he said the only difference is the walk to the set. You know, you walk past hundreds of people, I don't know what that guy's job is, and there's a fire truck there, and there's this, and it's just like, but then once you get into that inner circle, when you're really working with just the actors and the camera and a few kind of key members of the team, it's kind of all the same. So after the first week of just praying that I didn't get fired, it became like anything else. It was just like, let's try and tell the best version of the story. And also, I mean, there's people from Disney here, but I was just like, I was so sure that I was going to get I was going to be a kind of nightmare studio movie story, and I was going to get fucked around, and we were going to make the kind of lowest common denominator version of this movie, but it just wasn't. The studio were great, the producers were great, we had a great script, they let us shoot, they let us previewed well, and just like everything came together.
You feel it when you're watching this. This is somewhat linked to that, but I am very curious about the choice to go with a PG-13 rating for this film.
Isn't it crazy?
How did you even get away with that rating? It's intense.
I don't know. I feel like they're going to catch up to us sooner or later. We almost, I mean, the studio didn't even want to, the opening scene with the blood splatter, the studio didn't even want to bother previewing that, because they were like, there's no way that's going to get past the ratings board. And I was like, let's just do it just for the fuck of it. You know, we'll get a shot. And then weirdly, they weren't so worried about that as they were about the burning creature here.
Why?
I don't know. I guess it's okay to kill kids on all this.
Well, on that note, let's talk about your kids. The casting process on this. Of all of the lead roles in the film, which role would you say was the easiest to cast? Where it was like the person that was the perfect fit for the role just magically presented themselves, but then on the other hand, which role took, you know, some serious legwork in order to find the right person?
Chris Messina was so easy to cast because he's awesome. He's like, I've got since I was like 15, I've got this list of actors who I've always wanted to work with that I've just been keeping. It's got just, and it can be anyone. It can be somebody who just delivers a line, is amazing, you know, kind of background actor. It can be somebody who's, you know, can be Ryan Gosling. But it's like I keep a list of these actors. Chris Messina was very high up that list. And I've wanted to work with him forever. He's, you know, a friend of mine from England has this theory that there's certain actors, and Marina's actually one of these as well, certain actors who make movies 23% better. Which, he's done the science, I guess, he's done the maths. Chris Messina is very much one of those actors. Like everything he shows up in, like he's the best thing in that movie. And so we had this, you know, this was kind of my issue with the original draft that Beck and Woods did, is that it was from the father's perspective, the disbelieving father. Those kids are telling him there's a creature in the house, and he's going, no, it's fine. You know. And we had this character of Will who spends the whole movie disbelieving. It's a very easy trap to fall into, that this character becomes unlikable, that this character becomes like loathsome. And you just can't hate Chris Messina. He's just such a lovely presence on screen. He's so soulful. He's able to take the silliest line, he kept talking about this shadow monster that killed his kids. He's able to take a line like that and deliver it like he's in a Cassavetes movie. And so we cast him straight away. He's brilliant. I wanted him from the heart.
You can't even hate Chris Messina in Air, and dude's a jerk in Air.
Exactly, right?
So what was the opposite of that now? The one that took the most legwork in order to find the perfect fit for the role?
We tried to cast, Sawyer, who's played by Vivian Lyra Blair, was fucking incredible. That was originally cast for a boy, and I just was auditioning these like 8, 9-year-old boys, and I just thought they were all so fucking annoying. So I called the producers and I called the studio, and I was like, listen, if you can give me five boy actors of this age range who give like knockout performances, then we'll keep on casting it for a boy. And the only person they could think of was Haley Joel Osment. So like, name me 5 girls in this age range, and there's like so many amazing examples. And it's just like there's something about girls in that age range where they're I don't know. So we changed it to a girl at the last minute, and Vivian auditioned and was just so funny and so wise, and so she was 9 years old when we shot this, and she's like one of the wisest, most like seasoned actors I've ever worked with. You know, I was starting off like talking to her in like baby voice, and by the end I was just giving her like the most succinct, like in-depth direction, and she was taking it and rolling with it.
The answer to this might be no, but I hope it speaks to how natural her delivery is all the time. Are all of her lines scripted? Like in particular when she's hiding under the covers and saying, I'm just trying to stay alive. Things like that just ring so true.
That was scripted. She's got this amazing ability to take it, and I mean some of it is improvised. I like to improvise a lot with the actors, and some of that makes it in, but no, she's just got this ability to be able to take something and make it feel right.
She's something else. And
Yeah.
Also, of course, your lead, Sophie Thatcher.
Yeah.
I am a major Sophie Thatcher fan, courtesy of Yellow Jackets, and now this just makes me feel like she's a movie star. She commands
Fucking
this
incredible.
film.
Yeah.
Many questions about her. First, given the fact that I am a firm believer that she's a movie star and she's going to go on to be in many other films and shows, what is something about her as a collaborator that you are really excited for more directors out there to get to experience if they work with her, when they work with her?
That's a really good question. So she's able to she's like telepathic or something. She's able to, I mean, I didn't realize when we were doing the table read, I didn't realize how many of the scenes she was in and how many of the scenes she's like at that Toni Collette hereditary level, you know, having to just sob and wheeze her way through the film. She was that like every day. She's in almost every shot of this movie. After about 2 weeks, we were both just so fucking exhausted, and she's got this kind of like, we chatted a lot beforehand. We laid this very good groundwork, and we were into the same movies. Like the reason that I cast her was I hadn't seen Yellow Jackets. I watched like 20 minutes of an episode. Just
You have a lot to do right now, but catch up on Yellow Jackets.
No, I mean I know. I watched 20 minutes of Yellow Jackets before I did the Zoom with her. But I came on and I was wearing a t-shirt for this movie Possession. It's like weird, like art house horror. And she just started freaking out about Possession. We spent like half an hour talking about Possession. I was like, we can't cast her. but we had this level of trust where I could go up to her after a take and I could just kind of wave my hands and be like, oh, you're kind of being like this, and it just needs to be a bit more like this, you know. And she'd be like, I get you, and she'd do it just perfectly the next time, and we'd be able to just like manage to find this secret language of exhausted grunts. And she's exceptionally hardworking. She's like completely to the point of like self-destruction. She completely throws herself in. I was so worried she was going to lose her voice because every day was sobbing and screaming. But she's she's incredible. I want her in every single one of them.
Okay, now I need to follow up on that. Of all the really emotionally intense scenes she does in this film, which one pushed her to the brink the most in that respect, where you even stood there and thought to yourself, I cannot believe how far you're going with this moment?
So it was the moment where she sees the kind of ghost mom in the basement. We shot in New Orleans, which we had a lot of weather trouble in New Orleans. There was twice we got shut down because of tornadoes. We actually, so that the house burning at the end is actually a real house. We built this like 2/3 miniature so we could set it on fire. Like that's all in camera. There's no CG there. But we built it on day one for some stupid fucking reason. And so it's just sitting in this field for 34 days, which was like how many days we shot for. And this tornado was meant to tear through our miniature house twice. And both times it just missed it. That day in the basement when she had to walk towards her mum, turn on the light and have that kind of jolting reaction to seeing that it was just the dress, there was a tornado approaching. And the line producer was there being like, Rob, one more take. And I was like, okay. I just didn't cut. We did like 30 takes within one take because it just like kept pushing her further and further and further. Because I wanted this kind of like winded quality when she's, you know, that in all this darkness, she's got this light of her mum that she's walking towards. She turns on the light, she gets this kind of gut punch realization that she's just on her own. And whatever she's dealing with, she's got to deal with it alone. And I just wanted that kind of like winded, like deflation, and we just did it again and again and again and again. And the moment we got it, it was like yes, let's get out of the way of the tornado now. And everyone ran away. The car was waiting. Everyone who could have got off the set, they'd already evacuated.
Is that the shot you did the most takes on?
No, probably Sawyer getting thrown into the TV.
Joke.
No. That shot is made up of about like 20 different elements because it's all one shot, but like the couch tipping over and the legs and the controller falling, like it's all different. Like so, we just our grip. We had like numbers lined up on the floor. We had to like push the dolly, and we had our stern German VFX producer was yelling numbers, and he was like having to hit the numbers at certain times so the shot could be stitched together to be like to look like a perfect one. So we thought it
looks pretty damn good. I don't want to leave Sophie yet. For another example of a scene where she excels, can you tell us the moment in the film where she took what was on the page, or maybe what you originally envisioned for a scene, and just did something that you never expected, something that kind of proved to you that this role was uniquely hers and hers alone?
I think it was just that it was the quiet moment between her and Chris on the bed where she talks about her mum. Like me and Chris and her had spent a couple of days just like running through the scenes and improvising some stuff, and she'd kind of come up with this idea of like her mum, you know, before bed, kind of bringing her a cup of chamomile or something, and I don't know, there was something so kind of like beautifully understated about that entire scene. And you know, I like to cover the shit out of things. I'll shoot like 6 different angles. And that scene, we had 2 cameras running, and we just did like 2 takes of it. And her and Chris were so, they just hit it so beautifully. I was just like sobbing on the other side of the monitor. I just thought she did. I just thought it was amazing that one, that we were allowed to like spend so much time in this quiet moment that you know the studio wouldn't be like, this is boring, come on, cut past it. And also that they were able to go to that place and it feels so intimate. Like I always get so involved wrapped up in that scene.
In general, I really do appreciate the balance of quiet, intimate, character building moments, and then also just absolutely wild, terrifying scares. I was thinking about that. It was making me think of an interview that I read that you had done somewhat recently where you were talking about a particular scare that got such a loud reaction from the audience that you had to change something because people were drowning out the next line. Can you tell us what that moment was?
Well, it's the first moment you see the boogeyman under the bed when she rolls the moon ball and you see the creature's face. The whole next scene with the crucial information about, where Sophie's watching Salem from Host on the YouTube video, talking about bend the flame to the left if you're there, which plays off obviously in the ending. The audience just chattered through that whole scene, and so we had to add a whole bunch of padding. So that seems like crazy long now, just to give some chatter time.
Smart move, because it's still very effective, and I appreciate that in-world reference to Host. I love the idea that Salem exists in this world. I want to hit one more performance before I start to talk about your actual boogeyman here, because David Dastmalchian has a lot on his shoulders in this movie, because not only does his performance have to reverberate throughout the entire film, but he's the one who really has to do the short story justice.
He has to carry the whole of Stephen King on his shoulders. Yeah, he's the only character that's wholesale from the story.
How did you meet him? What did you see in him that gave you the faith that yes, this is our guy, he can do this?
I've always wanted to work with David. I think he's incredible. I think he's got such a kind of he's got such a presence, and it was really like I don't know how many of you guys have read the short story, but like he's kind of like the Lester Billings character in the story is kind of like he's like a truck stop harbinger of doom. He's like he'd vote for Trump, he's that kind of guy. He's like this kind of angry, abrasive character. And I wanted to do something different with that, and I like the idea of somebody coming in who would, Chris's character would want to help, would feel protective over, but then who could switch on a dime and suddenly be sinister. And you suddenly get the feeling like, oh, he's got a pencil in his hand, he could jump across the table and fucking stick that in my jugular. And I don't know what it says about David, but I just felt like he could do that. I felt like that was, that's kind of uniquely what he does, is that balance of vulnerability and sinister, kind of like prone for violence. And so he was a big Stephen King fan, and he'd loved Host, and we'd been in touch a little bit before that. And it was the craziest thing. We did, like, he came on board. We talked about the character. We did a bit of a block through with Chris, but we didn't really run the lines. The first time that we ran that scene, the cameras weren't up. It was just like we were just running it for the blocking. The whole set fell quiet. It was just like you could tell, even just on that first rehearsal, something special was happening. It came so much from his performance.
Can I put him in the 23% category?
He's more than that, I think.
I like
both
that.
him and Chris
I like that assessment. Let's get into your boogeyman, specifically the design of it, because like a big thing with movies like this is what makes or breaks it is showing your monster. So first question about that, what would you say is the biggest difference between what you thought your boogeyman was going to look like the day you started to conceive of the idea and then what it turned out to be in the finished cut of the film?
Oh shit, well, we went through like 6 different designs, and we kind of had this idea of this creature as this ancient thing, but it also had to kind of be about death, and it had to be about decay, and it was basically the specter of one of the movies that we referenced a lot when making this was Ordinary People, the Robert Redford movie, which is like one of the best movies about loss and grief and lack of communication. And really, that was what we hit on as like the central theme. It's like there are all these characters, they're all grieving, and none of them talking to each other. There's like this canyon between them that's which is the space that the Boogeyman fills. And so we kind of came up with this idea of the Boogeyman as representing all the kind of all the thoughts and feelings about the mother's death that they couldn't verbalize. And so the brief that I gave to the designer, this amazing guy called Keith Thompson, who designed the creature for The Ritual, which is a brilliant David Buckner's movie. I said this creature, this creature can look as weird as you want, but you basically have to be able to take the human form and break it, burn it, split it open to make this creature. It has to be a jigsaw puzzle of the human body. It has to be something to do with human form contorted into something we don't want to look at. And so that was the brief. And so they kind of came back with this like kind of charred steak looking skin and this idea of the kind of like face within the face was something that I came up with. You know, obviously this is a big studio, this is a Disney movie, so we're gonna have to see the boogeyman at the end. Sophie's gonna have to fight it and set it on fire and say, I wanted to make sure that we didn't leave this movie thinking that we'd seen the boogeyman, we get it, it's not scary anymore. That would be a huge disservice to this character, this idea. So we kind of came up with this concept of like, you're gonna see the boogeyman at the end, you're gonna see him as a full CG creation, but there's going to be this aspect that we see that kind of hints at this wider kind of Lovecraftian mythology. We're going to see this kind of TARDIS-like dimension within the creature, the second face that comes out, which is the face that imitates the voice, the face that knows your deepest secrets, this kind of like exposed flesh, Hellraiser monstrosity inside the creature. So we kind of came up with this idea of this kind of grinning smile that we find out eventually is made up of these fingers which part and become a second body within the body. So it was kind of just about leaving the question open at the end of the movie in regards to the creature.
Okay, leaving questions open, yes, but you just gave a lot of information, and I always get obsessed with movie Bibles and lore and things like that. So how much about this boogeyman did you have to think through in terms of, you know, like what its abilities are, where those abilities are limited, what it could sustain in a fight, what could actually kill it? Do you know all those rules?
We literally had a Bible. Yeah.
I want to read that Bible. Can you share a detail from the Bible that maybe people will think about and might enhance the viewing experience the second time around, because everyone in the room is going to see the movie again?
I mean, I'm not even sure how much of this you can actually see, because so when we were putting the edit together, we had this whiteboard in the edit, and I had the amount of screen time that the alien has in Alien, the amount of screen time that the shark has in Jaws. I had those both written down, and then I had our screen time for the boogeyman. And we're 1 second less than the shark in Jaws, and we're 1.5 seconds less than the alien in Alien. So I was like, I don't want to see. I want this to be something that's inferred more than it's seen. I want this to be a haunted house movie more than it's a monster movie. That being said, there's lots of details that are there. I don't know how much of it is on screen, how much you catch, but like we had this monster is battle scarred. This monster, you know, for the finale of the movie, it has the kind of shotgun blasts torn into it that Rita shot it with. It's got these kind of like badly healed over wounds that could be from an ancient battle axe. We built in all this kind of history just into its flesh, and it's only on screen for about a minute and a half.
Seen prequels. There's a whole prequel story built into your monster.
I'm game, you don't
Many of
tell me.
them. And you can cast Ryan Gosling. You do.
Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
I think we just came up with a great movie idea. Make sure I get credit for that. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, then I'm going to throw it to the audience. I love asking about overcoming challenges on set and like the unexpected magic that can come from them. So can you give us an example of a day on set when things weren't going to plan, you found a creative way to pivot and something turned out better because of it?
Okay, so this didn't happen on set, but originally Sawyer was meant to be sleeping with a toy lightsaber. Because I had a toy lightsaber as a kid. That was what kept me safe from the monsters. But I had a cheap knockoff lightsaber that used to fritz and used to kind of like do this kind of it just used to kind of flicker and fuck up, and I thought that'd be cool. So that was what was written in the script. And like about 2 weeks out of shooting, Disney came back and were like, we can't have Princess Leia using a shitty lightsaber. And so me and Jamie, our props master, and Jeremy, our production designer, literally we stayed up like almost the entire night, and we were just Googling kids' toys that light up. And at about 3 in the morning, we found this moon ball. We're like, fuck it, that'll do. And so, and then I just a week before we started shooting, I was rewriting those scenes or re-storyboarding those scenes to be the moonball, which ended up being some of the best scenes in the movie, and just, you know, it's one of those things where a week before shooting, you've got everything. Like I storyboard the whole movie myself. Like I've got everything up on the wall, everything is decided in advance. And suddenly you get something like that, spanner in the works, and you realize there's endless possibilities. You know, you can extend this sequence with the moonball. You can have her roll it down the hall and it cracks. And it's gonna be behind it. You know, it added so many more dimensions to the scares. And yeah, it's like it's probably our most iconic image is Vivian with the moonball.
I feel like moonball sales are gonna go up after this. That's just like a
stock.
fun, nice little reference. I like that. An ending question. Did you ever even just like for a minute consider ending the movie like the short story ends?
No, but we tried to kind of like pay homage to it, like that creepy shot of Dr. Weller that you talk about. It's like that was us trying to kind of nudge the Stephen King fans and be like, hey, you know, we've read the short story too, and then even the idea of like the creature within the second skin. I don't know who's read the short story here. I'm going to spoil it for you. The short story ends. You have the therapy session, and then just like the end of the movie, Lester leaves and then realizes he's forgotten his coat, and he hears the sound of the therapist saying, "Come on back in, Lester." He comes in, and the therapist is there and peels off his therapist suit, his human suit, and you realize that he is the creature all along. And so we paid homage to that with the ending scene. The kind of like the Lovecraftian skin within the skin design of the creature was kind of inspired by that. And so we were kind of like tipping our hat to that throughout.
I appreciate that. I'm going to follow that up with one more question before I throw it to the audience. So do you think escape is real in this scenario, or is it one of those things where they think they have killed it, but that darkness will always follow them?
I mean, look, I don't like issue movies. I don't like movies that kind of like pander. But I think the kind of the central idea behind this is that things that you don't speak about, that you let fester, will turn into something dark and malevolent and will come back to you. And the idea is that this family, at the end of the movie, we see them communicating, we see them moving through grief together. They're not at the end of their journey by any means, but they're kind of working through it, and they're bringing into the light all the things that they've let fester in darkness. And that's almost like, that's the disinfectant that keeps the creature away. The creature's always there. There's a darkness that we can all give into if we don't lean on each other, if we don't help each other through the hard times. So the idea is the creature's always there. It's a kind of ongoing process, just like anything, just like mental health, just like dealing with grief, just like you know, figuring your way through life. It's always there in the kind of it's always there in the shadows. Is the idea.
I mean, it's still creepy, but I like that there's some catharsis and somewhat of a happy ending, even though I really love how eerie the end of the short story is. All right, audience questions time. I'm gonna try to get as many as possible. I saw you first.
Hey! That's Molly who got thrown into the TV! Probably the burning building at the end. I mean, that kind of big one where they run from the basement through the house, and then we come up and tilt up to the house exploding. That's another one that's like pieced together of like three different shots. So it starts off in the house that we built, which we really set on fire, and then they go outside and we pan up, and it's our miniature that we exploded, and there's another shot in there that I can't remember. But that one was crazy because it was like we had the real actors, including Viv, the 9-year-old, running through this house. It was really on fire. That in that take really got out of control and like set on way too much on fire. And so if that shot feels dangerous, it's because it really is. Like as soon as the shot was finished, our AD ran on. I was like, everyone out. We all had to go and wait in the courtyard while our entire set burned down. So we could only get the one take of that.
Job very well done, by the way. That seemed incredible.
Incredible.
initially handed the drawing of the monster,
Yeah.
I got a sense that maybe he recognized it.
Oh, I like that. I don't have an answer for that, but yeah, I'm going to pretend that that's the case.
I would think maybe there was some denial about it, and that's why he became a psychologist in the first place.
It was more, we were trying to kind of give this sense of like a presence to the creature before you saw the creature. So every time the characters look at the picture, I was kind of like, you know, it's like staring into the eyes of Colonel Kurtz at the end of Apocalypse Now. It's like you're kind of looking into the depths of darkness here. So as soon as Chris sees it, it's meant to be almost like there's this kind of this void sucking him in. And he just, yeah, he knocked it out the park.
It's a great performance, Pete. All right. I'm gonna start down here and then go up here so I don't miss anybody. First you, and then the person sitting next to you.
Hi, so one of my favorite scenes in the movie is actually is leading up to your stunt scene, which was wonderful. The bit with Sawyer playing PlayStation, she hears the monster, and then she's using the PlayStation, the weapon blast in the
Yeah.
to light up the room. I was wondering if there was any particular inspiration for that scene, or what the thought process was, because I just thought it was really clever and definitely something that like a little kid would do.
Oh, thanks. Well, we actually, so me and Mark, who wrote the movie, we actually came up with that scene at Barney's Beanery, just like 2 minutes down the road from here. We were like 2 beers down, and we were sitting there, like hitting our heads together, thinking. I mean, the question I always go back to with set pieces is like, what would James Wan do? Because he's the master of modern set pieces. And I like to always like hang a set piece around a concept. So when you're talking to your friend the next day, you can be like, oh, look at the video game scene, was so scary. And they know exactly what you mean. So we had this idea of Sawyer playing video games. I think every time I get high and play video games, I get really freaked out by all the darkness in my room. I try and fire my machine gun as much as possible. No, the real reference for that scene was the scene in Jurassic Park where the raptors stalk the kids in the kitchen, because we had a lot of scenes. When I was prepping, I put all the set pieces on my wall in different colors. Whether it was like if it was a jump scare, it was red. If it was like a kind of tension scene, it was blue. And if it was, if it was like kind of more creepy, like the mum in the basement, it was a different color. And we didn't have enough like sustained tension beats, like hide and seek beats. And I was like, we've got to try and do our version of the ultimate hide and seek scene, which is the raptors in the kitchen. So, which is where I stole all the stuff with the feet and the thing. It's all from there. But yeah, the idea was like, let's take this idea of a kid playing video games, and that's the only light source, and how can we string that out as much as possible? And we just got really drunk and started pitching ideas back and forth.
Jurassic Park references will always serve your movie well. All right, I'm gonna start to come in the middle.
Oh, wait, what,
I'm sorry, I forgot
No,
you over
it's
here.
okay. It's not even that deep of a question.
That's
It's
right.
just gonna bother me if I don't ask it. So I couldn't help but notice that their house number was 19, and yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
There's so many Stephen King references in this
I was
movie.
gonna ask about if that was an intentional
There's
Easter
some-
egg and what other Easter eggs are sitting around.
I didn't even spot half of them, so I've got to shout out Jeremy Woodward, who's our amazing production designer. He's done movies like he did The Sound of Metal and these kind of amazing movies. It was always me and him at about 3 a.m, the last people in the studio. He would drive me back, and we'd like deliriously try and keep each other awake so we didn't drive into oncoming traffic. And he would be staying up, not only kind of doing his real job, but also coming up with Stephen King references that he could bake in. So every single picture in the house is a reference to a Stephen King novel. There's it references. There's all sorts, even down to like there's a short story that it's a short story that only he remembers that Stephen King wrote. That has a description of like a special Brill cream, and he like designed this Brill cream. It's not even. It's like in the background of one of the shots, but he's got that in there. So there's so many. Even today, I was spotting some extra ones. Like if you look in Rita's house, there's like K's everywhere for King. There's K's throughout the whole movie for King. If you look at the beginning sequence with the the kids are getting murdered. It's got the alphabet on the wall. The K is the only letter that's a different colour. The S and the K. So there's all these kind of things. And I'll take credit for as many of them as I spot. Most of them are Jeremy.
See, I told you you're all gonna go and see it again. Now you have to. All right, Sam, we'll come back to you.
Lester's wife seemed to understand pretty quickly that he, I believe the way she put it, was passed the creature along to this family. In your mind, was Lester aware that that's what he would be doing?
No, we kind of played with that. Like there were earlier versions of the script where it was a bit more like The Ring, where he was like passing it on, and that, you know, he thought maybe that would make him safe. But it felt like the way to go with him was that he was just somebody who was trying to be understood. You know, there was this idea running through the movie about just trying to be seen by other people, trying to be seen in your experience of grief, and that he's somebody who's just showing up to try and have somebody listen to his story and believe him, which is, you know, all that the family need to do ultimately to come together. And we kind of had this idea of Lester as being this person who's so desperately in need of that connection and that validation, and somebody to see him in his experience of grief. And then Rita is almost like a warning to the character. She's gone the other way. She's somebody who's decided that to love and to care is to kind of open yourself up to heartbreak, and she's shut herself down. She's basically become a soldier, a hardened soldier, intent on destroying this thing. And she's almost like this warning to the characters about what happens if you close yourself down entirely from other people and let hate consume you. So they were meant to be kind of like different sides of that same coin.
All right, I saw a bunch of hands right here.
Congratulations for presenting your child at the stairs very well.
Thank you, thank you.
I want to know, in your head, is the Boogeyman everything?
No, but everyone wanted it to be. Like my idea was of this kind of voracious creature that was driven by a kind of hunger that was almost drawn to sadness and discontent, like a moth to a flame, and that it wasn't driven by kind of intellectual pursuits, but it was very kind of animalistic. Like ever since I saw A Quiet Place, I wanted to do a fucking great monster movie, and so I saw this and I was like, this is my chance. So my conception was very much like a monster, and I think it took a lot of convincing for everyone on the creative team, because I think everyone has this conception of the creature as being this like tall, slender man-like creature that's almost like a kind of, like I didn't want it to be like a kind of pantomime character. Like one of the directives to the design team was like, it's not something that has seen human fears and is trying to shape itself after human fears. This is the basis of human fears. This is where it comes from. Like, it's not something that's going to be like a kind of sideshow freak that's like this tall, like bipedal thing. It's going to be something much more ferocious than that. But you know, it was a constant back and forth, and sometimes it just made sense for it to stand up like a person, like when it kind of looms above Sawyer with the moonball. But mostly, I wanted it to be something feral.
All right, I think we can squeeze in two more. I saw a hand there, and we're gonna wrap with you two. So you first.
I just noticed one of the producers, Sean,
Yeah.
yeah, who is famous for Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
It just made me think of like the basement is like the vine is all over the basement.
Yeah.
Is that something like this idea?
Let's pretend that's a reference and that's it. It's probably just laziness on our part, but no, I mean, so those guys. I mean, like Sean is the best, and Sean fought for this movie and fought for it to be this. I mean, this version is remarkably close to my director's cut. Like, there's not a frame in this movie that's not my movie, and that's because of Sean. Sean fought every step of the way, and the studio and the producers were amazing. Everyone at 21 Labs. There were a couple of times when we did tread on the toes of Stranger Things. I didn't realize, like I love Stranger Things, but I didn't realize how in their territory we were getting with the vines. And then our finale, originally Sophie was meant to grab a baseball bat and it was going to be a baseball bat in this cellar covered in vines with Christmas lights flashing. Dan Cohen, who was one of the producers on Stranger Things, like, tapped me on the shoulder and was like, "This is just Stranger Things." And we tricked you all. We turned it into a hockey stick, and nobody spotted it. But yes, we were. I mean, that's just, you know, especially as the seasons go on and it gets darker and it gets more fucked up and scary. It's like that's the template for doing like really scary cosmic horror with a heart. So, you know, I was thrilled to be working with those guys.
All right, last one. You want to take us home?
Yes, are you a big fan of Lin-Manuel's writing? Because this kind of feels like a Lin-Manuel and like Insidious, you know how Insidious has read?
Yeah.
Kind of like, you know?
I fucking love Insidious.
Yes.
I love both Insidious. Insidious 2 is underrated. I watched The Invisible Man a lot as reference for this. I think Lee makes much classier movies than this. Like he's like, it's this the patience that with which he kind of sets up his scares in The Invisible Man was something I was like constantly drawing reference from. I also love the way that Lee shoots Invisible Man with that kind of omniscient camera that moves of its own volition. Like I was referencing that a lot in the opening scene with the kind of 360 shot that goes around the room and finally sees the blood splatter on the frame. I was like, this has to feel like how the camera moves in The Invisible Man. Like it doesn't give a fuck about what's going on. It would be, you know, the most horrific shit and the camera's just gliding through. It was that, and it was the opening of Midsummer where the camera glides through the house and sees the dead sister. I was like, it's got to feel like the camera doesn't care. The camera's just this impersonal thing moving through the space. That there's almost a sense of like, this is fated, this is doomed, this is going to happen. There's nothing you can do to stop it. That was the kind of feeling we wanted for that first scene, which I fucking can't believe. That's a PG-13. So we had the trailer for Boogeyman was playing before Ant-Man, which I was really excited about. I snuck in and I was like sitting in the back, and we got so many complaints from parents that we'd like given their kids nightmares that they called it from the beginning of all the Marvel movies. Disney got a bit of their money back. It's great. That's the whole idea, is to fuck up a whole new generation.
No one should ever ask me what their kids should watch, but that would have been a dream come true. If I was under 13, I was sitting in there and a
Right.
Boogeyman trailer came on, I would love it.
That's the thing. So if you guys like this movie, please spread the word, like tweet about it, share it. I can't believe this movie's got a PG-13. All the tweens are off on school break. I want them to all sneak into this movie and get morally fucked up. So it's down to you to spread the word.
Don't forget, if you do that, maybe we'll get a Caveman prequel with Ryan Gosling. Get on it.